Hey, hi, Dan John here, danjohnuniversity.com. Well, thanks for dropping by. I'm just here in my den, I guess would be what they call it nowadays, or back in the 1950s. But I was going through some of my books in this part of my library. This area in my books is, well, there's less magazines here. There's more books. Most of the books in this area are signed by the authors or I know somehow. But one of the things I'd like you to start thinking about, and the way I look at, especially at performance, is through rituals. If you belong to any kind of organized religion, rituals. If you actually lived in a fairly normal home, you probably understand rituals. These are those things we do as humans to call everyone's attention. I actually had a former boss of mine scold me because I knew how to command a group by the Catholic group by simply making the sign of the cross, and that would quiet everybody down. And he said that the role of the sign of the cross is not to make people get quiet. And I thought, well, that's true, but boy, does it work well. Rituals are habits in action, I think. Well, what I wanted to show you is a couple of books that I lean on to understand habits better. The first is really new. It's this book here by Brad Stolberg. And Brad is a good friend of my friend Steve's. So I got this book when it came out. But one of the things I like a lot about this book, it's a section in the end called From Principles to Action. Brad does a fabulous job reviewing things like the stories of why you need it. When I picked up the book, I just looked at the cover and I reminded of his multiple page story on Charles Darwin and how long it took for him to sift through what he learned on his trip on the Beagle, to figure out, to rethink, to challenge himself, to come up with a theory of evolution. And I really, really liked that chapter because it took a long time. And when people ask me about something like my movement matrix, gave a workshop this week, and it was like, well, you don't just sit down and just spill out something. And again, I think the genius of anything is it's not so much what you keep, sometimes it's what you throw out. And what I like about this book is at the end, he breaks every single idea into things. First, there's behaviors you want to start. Number two, you always start off with triggers. And one of the things I like about the book, and I like this idea, is that he uses his cell phone's alarm to trigger himself to do certain things. And I've been doing that lately from reading this book, where if I write now down the date, so I'm writing down tomorrow's to-do list. What I also do now is I set about a 15-minute timer before every single event or podcast or phone call or anything. I just set this little timer so it rings at 7:45 in the morning, and it even saves me that brain space of even having to think about getting ready for something. It's just right there. So it goes behavior to start, this idea you want to fix, the trigger, and then you write down the rewards and what you want. And the one I'm looking at here is movement. And the reward for movement is less stiffness, more creativity, and enhanced focus. Man, that's great. That's a lot of good things. The reward, sometimes, in my case, I'll be alive longer. Maybe I'll look prettier, whatever it is, okay? And then how to design your environment. I'm just looking around this room. I don't want to show you everything, but I made a commitment with my daughter, Kelly, to drink a lot more hot water with lemon. My friend Pavel talks about this with digestion. In Ayurvedic tradition, it's discussed for all kinds of good reasons. Simply sipping hot water, according to the Ayurvedic tradition, is good for body fat loss. But the reason I do it is, I'm sure that's all true, but the reason I do it is I have that case of and this has completely cured it. So to do that right there, I have a hot water pot, and just below it, I have a mini fridge, and I've got 2 bottles of lemon concentrate. I used to use actual lemons. They're not expensive, but you just end up with the rinds everywhere. And then I went to these little packets, but the problem is it's just so much waste. And now I'm back to concentrate. So Brad's book, The Practice of Groundedness, a transformative path to success that feeds, not crushes your soul. Good little book, nice little book, a good big picture book on habits. Of course, my fallback book is the work of B.J. Fogg, and of course that's Tiny Habits, and I am a big believer in tiny habits, and he's come out with some new work lately that's even better. What you do with tiny habits, and of course if you see his TED Talk, it's kind of funny. Everybody has a floss stick at the TED Talk, and he says, can you commit to flossing 1 tooth? Well, yeah, I can, sure, there's nothing to that, you do that. And his idea is that you start your habits with habits that are so small that it's ridiculous that you can't do it. And of course, once you complete the habit, you floss 1 tooth a day, you give yourself an applause and go, yeah. And I decided to make, when I did his course, one of the things I wanted to make sure I was safer going into the shower, because at my age, the most dangerous thing you might do in a day is take a shower. And so what I did was that every time before I took a shower, I would do 2 push-ups. 1, 2. Now, great, I got more push-ups in it, great, good for me. But what it did is it broke that pattern of showering that I've had probably since 1962. And when I go into the shower, I always make sure I have one hand on a wall, and I go 1 foot and then the other. And that was my habit. And I would do it, clap my hands and say, good for me. My shower safety system is so hardwired in my head, it's what I do. Now, because of travel and because of public things, I don't do push-ups every time anymore. But man, I always have my hand on that wall. Tiny Habits, B.J. Fogg, great book. He has a great website. And then, of course, someone I have marvelously great respect for, Josh Hillis. He's just come out with this book here called Lean and Strong. And I love this book. A lot of great, of course, he's just so good. He's just such a kind guy. In total disclaimer, he dedicated the book to me, and he quotes me quite a bit in the book, and that's great. It's odd. I feel like the copy I have, I've barely opened this, but then I reminded myself is that I had read the e-versions, the PDFs and stuff like that was putting together. And so when I opened today, it was like, I recognize this I know this book so well. Well, I know it because I read it many, many times to help him any way I could while I was putting it together. This book discusses things like, I love this line here. Lean and strong for life depends on the wise 5. And the wise 5 are value, skills, connection, accepting thoughts and feelings, and committed action. He calls this the failure 5. Reward or punishment. By the way, it works great though. Reward and punishment works marvelously. But it's not a good way to do things long term. Self-esteem versus skills. I like that. Status is a failure 5 versus connections. Suppressed unwanted thoughts and feelings versus accepting thoughts and feelings. And force or motivated thoughts and feelings versus commitment. These books all deal with habit. If I spent more time in my shelves here, I know I'd find a lot more books with habits. I still think that our job is to take a habit and then turn it into a ritual. B.J. Fogg would say, where you take a habit you're doing and then you latch on a new habit on top of it. For example, every time after I brush my teeth, I drink a glass of water. I brush my teeth every day. No, really, I do. And so his idea is just, so here's a habit you already have ingrained. Now add that to it. It's interesting to think of Earl Nightingale talking about mindlessly driving around in rush hour traffic or to work or something like that, listening to crap radio. And radio, by the way, Earl, who's now in heaven or somewhere else, hopefully it got worse than what you thought. His idea was to turn your vehicle into a moving university, and I took his wise advice 100%. So when I'm driving to work, my connected habit is listening to a book on tape, a course on tape, whatever I can do to increase my knowledge base. Well, thanks for dropping by. I'm Dan John, and I'm always happy to share these things with you. Thank you. Bye-bye.